Yeah, this morning we're going to do a review of a study called The United States is Not Your Problem. So hopefully this will be a nice bit of review in case we've forgotten some of the content of this one. I know I've learned a lot from reviewing it myself. So let's begin with just reminding ourselves of where we are on the line. We've got two waymarks between, so this is the line of the 144,000. We have two waymarks in between here. Does anybody, can you tell me which dates I'd put there?
2019. 2019.
19, I heard that one. And for this one?
2021.
Thank you. So right now we're in 2022. So pop us here. Okay, and just so that we can have a bit of context about where this presentation was given, it was given in October the 1st, 2021. So 2021. So I'll put it here. This is when this presentation was given. These two waymarks, if I'm going to put some labels here, I'll put increase of knowledge for that one. And what would I put for that one?
Formalization.
Thank you. Can you tell me what the subject was?
Radical.
Yep.
Feminism.
And
feminism.
Yes. All right, so feminism here and feminism here. We also have some labels here. We also use raffia and panium for those two. Okay, so just to give us a bit of context on that. So this study was given just before the studies on radical feminism. So that's where we are. And as part of this, it's a lot of looking back. So what Elder Tess did when she was here was to point us back to 2019. And she also pointed us back to a study from here. So could anyone tell me what these dates are?
1991.
Yes.
1996 and 1996.
And what was formalized? So that's a formalization. And there was a document. Does anybody remember what the name of?
Tell me the name of that one.
Yes. Good. So we'll be looking at some content from here and this one today. Okay, so that's just to give us a bit of context. I'll take you through my main points so you know where we're headed. So we're going to look at, first of all, this one here. We're going to look a little bit at the German camp meeting, which is when this was given, especially presentations numbers 9 to 11, which is when Elder Tess said that the gender message was nailed into our message. We're going to look at the three dispensations. And when I say three dispensations, I mean Millerite history, 1888 history, and then ours. We're going to look at the first angel in 1996. So that's that one there. That's to give us a foundation. And from there, we move on to the implications. We're going to talk about racism. So the need to remove our racism lens, so that will become clearer as we go. And the need to remove our USA lenses, or the lens looking at sexism through the lens of the United States. And finally, there'll just be some points about our need to rethink the United States. given that the test is global. So we'll go through those points and we'll start with point 1. All right. So going to this presentation from Germany, we had gender nailed into our message. So I'll just put that here. So we're talking about Germany in 2019. And it's messages 9 to 11 by Elder Tess. And that's where we have gender is nailed into our message. So a little bit of a review about those 3 studies. Presentation 9, it was called The Line of Restoration. Just to sort of remind us, or just to simplify it down to what the board work looked like, we had racism here and lined up with sexism. Okay, and this was from covering the whole of human history, so from beginning to end, all the way through Eden to Eden, New Earth to New Earth. So that's the subject matter of that study. This is how sexism was nailed into our message. Number 10 was called The Model of the King of the South. Okay, and if you look at the board then, or just to, what may remember, you would have seen an illustration that looked a bit like this. Okay, in the north, in the south, and east and west there. That may bring a little bit back to mind what was covered there. If you don't remember, go back and have a look. We also had an illustration like this where there was control and death. Yes, and graduations in between, but connecting the question about atheism as it relates to church and state, and also obviously connects to abuse, sexism, all of that. So that's that one. And number 11, it was called What Will the Sunday will look like? Okay, now in this one, this is where you get 3 dispensations. As I said, I was going to do Millerite, 1888 history, and then us. But we were looking at in terms of spiritual gifts, volume 1, great controversy, and then making application, final generation. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with this one here, the 3 dispensations. So we're going to start with this one. So we're going to look at that first. We're not going to go into this one, but we will look a little bit at this one as well when we're talking about race, just to give you an idea of where we're headed. I'm going to screen share so we can do a little bit of a revision of this study here. There may be people who haven't seen it, or it's a very powerful study, so it's probably good to go over it anyway. So I'm going to screen share the Ellen White app. Okay, so I think you can all see that now. You can see the menu on the left. So I'm going to take us to early writings, which says here, It was written in 1882, but it's a compilation so that we can understand the context of these chapters that we're going to look at. Spiritual Gifts, volume 1 was actually from 1858. So it's taking us to the Millerite time period. Now, if we look at these chapters, can anybody have a look here? We're going to work backwards on our timeline. Actually, I'll stop sharing briefly so you can see what I've got on the board, because I can't show you both at once. Before we get into this, let's just put the dates for the Millerite lines. So this is what we're going to do here. We're going to do Spiritual Gifts, volume 1 for this one. We're going to do Great Controversy for this one. I'd like somebody to tell me the date for the second Advent in this Millerite period.
1863.
1863.
Good. I'd like a date for the close of probation.
1850.
1861.
Thank you. And we want to go back one, so that would be their Sunday law.
1850.
Thank you. And here, I'm not going to put a date. I'm going to put Loud Cry. So hopefully everybody's okay with that. What would we label this dispensation here? If I was going to put a symbol. What did you say?
Time of trouble. Time of trouble.
Time of trouble. Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to just look at the chapters of the book and allocate them here. So what I want us to do, first of all, somebody can look at the list of chapters and tell me which chapter would belong to 1863, the second Advent. So I'll bring that back up again. Okay, so if you can look at the list of chapters, but kind of near the end of the book, oops, sorry, near the end of the book, what chapter would you like me to allocate to the second Advent?
Deliverance of the Saints.
Yes, thank you. You can't see me on the board, but I'm just going to put DS there. And I think if we were counting the chapters, that would be chapter 37. So I'll put 37 underneath. Okay, so we'll go back one from there, Time of Trouble. So that's, I think, doesn't need explanation. That's easy to see, chapter 36. Go back another one. So I think that's called The Third Message Closed. So what waymark would I put that for? The Third Message Closed.
1861.
Thank you. Yes. So the Loud Cry, that's easy. No needing to guess there. And then we'll go back one from there, and that's called The Sins of Babylon. So we've got these here. I'll just tick them. We've just placed them all. So when we go one back from the Loud Cry, we've got The Sins of Babylon. So the interesting thing is that was brought out in this study is when we go to that chapter, we can see what it's about. Now, I've highlighted a few words here because we don't see anything to do with Sunday or Sabbath here. We do see some mentions of the cup of God's fury, the cup which is full. So we know its connection to Revelation. And I've just highlighted the word slave and slavery there. So we can see there that in that dispensation, when we're talking about that waymark, we're talking about slavery and not Sabbath and Sunday. So that's, I'll just pop that in there as well. That's sin. And chapter 33 there. hopefully that's clear for everyone. If you had any questions about that, just put it in the chat. So the point there being, if Jesus had come in 1863, Revelation would have been fulfilled. Revelation 18 would have been fulfilled specifically, and we wouldn't have seen any issue to do with Sabbath and Sunday. But that's not the only point there. In 1850, where was the 1850 compromise in the world? Who was responsible for that, or where was this all occurring in geographically? In what country?
America.
Say again, please.
USA.
Sorry, USA. Thank you, John. Yes. Recognise your voice. USA. Time of trouble. That's the American Civil War, isn't it? Which ends up continuing. Time of trouble. Which country is that applying to?
America.
Thank you. So we see the issue, slavery here. We see the area as USA. So it's the USA that we're going to pick up on today. I've got this line up above as well. So I'm just going to mark it here as a chiasm. Okay, so we see a reflection of both. If I was to put here Eve, then we can put Cain and Ham. I think everyone is fairly familiar. What will I label here?
Slavery.
Yeah.
Ham.
1898 Ham.
And this one here?
1888 what?
888.
Yeah, and the issue there?
Worship.
And the issue at the end of the world?
Gender.
Thanks. Okay, so we've just done here spiritual gifts, and we see it was written in 1858. That's when it was written, and we can see that the cup, there's a cup, the cup is full, and it's occurring in the United States. So that's dispensation number one. So turning our attention to the second one, I'll screen share again and we'll look at great controversy. Okay, so we're going to date the great controversy being written, I'm just going to say 1880s, because Spirit of Prophecy Volume 4 was 1884, and then you got 1888 Great Controversy, and then another edition. I'm just going to scroll down again. We're going to do the same exercise. So if somebody could tell me which one you would apply to the second Advent.
Chapter 40, God's
delivered.
people delivered.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've put 40 in there. We're going to now work our way backwards. So time of trouble, that's easy. Close of probation. I hope people agree that the final warning.
Final warning.
Yes. And sorry, final warning is not close of probation. Final warning is what? It's by the time you get to close of probation, it's a bit late for a warning.
Loud cry.
Yes, that's right. So you see the structure of the chapters is slightly different. Okay, so we can put loud cry for that one. And then if we go back and we're looking for the chapter that relates to the Sunday law waymark, we actually find chapters 35, 36 and 37 do like a repeat and enlarge on that subject. So I'll highlight the ones that we're looking at. So it's these, those ones there, but we're going to group 35 to 37 as Sunday law waymark, all to do with the Sabbath issue and Sunday and the sin of that. And then we're going to look, yeah, I'll label the others as well. So I'll stop sharing and write that up. Okay. I'm going to put dates here for this. I'll put second Advent and close of probation for that, and Sunday law, and that would actually be Sunday loud cry here. And we had 40, 39 for time of trouble. Then we have 38 here, and this was 35 to 37. Okay. So let's have a little look at one of the passages that we're going to read about the sin at this time. I'll share again and I'll ask somebody to read. One. No, we're going to do not that one. This one. Yep. Okay, Lynn, are you available? Could you read this paragraph for us?
Yes, sure. Starting with the prophecy, correct?
Please do everything in grey and yellow. Anything that's grey or yellow, I've highlighted in yellow some of the key words.
No worries. The prophecy of Revelation 13 declares that the power represented by the beast with lamb-like horns shall cause the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the papacy, there symbolized by the beast, like unto a leopard. The beast with two horns is also to say to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast. And furthermore, it is to command all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive the mark of the beast. Revelation 13:11 to 16. It has been shown that the United States is the power represented by the beast with lamb-like horns, and that this prophecy will be fulfilled when the United States shall enforce Sunday observance, which Rome claims as the special acknowledgement of her supremacy. But in this homage to the papacy, the United States will not be alone. The influence of Rome in the countries that once acknowledged her dominion is still far from being destroyed, and prophecy foretells a restoration of her power.
Thank you, Lynn. So what I'm just going to put here is a phrase called homage through hatred, or homage. And the reason I'm going to put through hatred is because this is a presentation that was given by Elder Tess already. Now here we're going to just do a little deviation, a little bit of a sidetrack, and we're going to talk about the presentation summaries list that was written up for us to use as a resource. So Elder Tess had made the point in this study that if you want to know what that homage is, then you can go back into presentations that were already done and get that information. And that's accessible to you by using this document which was written. So what I want to do is demonstrate how to use this document. And what we will do is share it. It's already been shared, but we'll reshare it after the presentation so that if you don't have a copy, you can have one. So I'm going to screen share the presentation summary. So if you already have it, you'll know it. If you don't, this is what it looks like. I want to point out that you've got a website at the top there, www.themidnightcry.co.uk. We will look at that as well. So we'll just walk through the process of how you would find out what this, the question about what the homage looks like how you could find out more about that. So for me, I can type into here, like maybe search for the word, search for the word homage. I'll just do that. No, the search doesn't work. You can search for the word homage, but in this case, because I'm screen sharing, I can't get that to work. I'm just going to scroll down to where it is. So you could scan it with your eyes. You could also search for the word itself in the document. What we find is that it's all the way down. So I'm just scrolling down and we find it near the end here. Okay, so once it's settled into place, we can see, I'm just going to highlight that with my mouse. Presentation 2, homage through hatred. I'll just slide up a little bit because it tells you where to find that. So that was given in April 2021 at Guadalupe. So what you would do then, if you were looking this up, you would then go to that website and find it there. So I'll just show you how to do that as well. Okay, if you go to that website, it would look like this when you open it up. You just click on 2021 and scroll down. You find all of Elder Tess's ones grouped here at the top, and Guadalupe is here in April. So click there, scroll down, presentation 2, homage through hatred. Just click play and you can watch it there. It's just a little walkthrough in case some people are not familiar how to use this. It's a really great tool for revising or for looking for subjects that you might want to teach and revise to lead anything as well. It's a good resource to use. So I'll stop sharing that. It was just a little detour, but it was mentioned in this presentation, so I thought it would be good to do. Now, we have other quotes as well. So we've done great controversy. The one that Lynn read out was this one here. Great controversy 578.3. Now we're going to do 3SM 392.1. So I'm going to screen share that and we can read it together. Marie, would you be able to read this paragraph for us?
Yeah, sure. The so-called Christian world is to be the theatre of great and decisive actions. Men in authority will enact laws controlling the conscience. After the example of the papacy, Babylon will make all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Every nation will be involved.
Thank you. Can you stay there and read the next few? We'll do 3 more, if that's okay, but they're not long. Oh, well, the last one's a bit long. Okay, that one, please.
Let those who want to make a name in the world go with the world, but let those who would serve God obey God and not man. In the great conflict between faith and unbelief, the whole Christian world will be involved. All will take sides.
Thank you. And hopefully you can see where I've highlighted the yellow words. What we're bringing out here is the geography involved. So, and this one also, I just wanted to point out the context is 1893 is when it was written. So we can see the dispensation that these passages apply to. I'll go to this one here, great controversy, that one there. Mary, if you're still there.
Yes, so, yeah, sure. In the issue of the contest, all Christendom will be divided into 2 great classes: those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus, and those who worship the beast and his image and receive his mark.
Thank you. And I'll do one more. Hang on, I'll just try to get it to fit. I think that's all of it there. So if you can read that one.
Sure. As the Sabbath has become the special point of controversy throughout Christendom, and religious and secular authorities have combined to enforce the observance of the Sunday, the persistent refusal of a small minority to yield to the popular demand will make them objects of universal execration. It will be urged that the few who stand in opposition to an institution of the church and a law of the state ought not to be tolerated, that it is better for them to suffer than for the whole nations to be thrown into confusion and lawlessness. The same argument many centuries ago was brought against Christ by the rulers of the people. It is expedient for us, said the wily Caiaphas, that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. John 11:50. This argument will appear conclusive, and a decree will finally be issued against those who hallow the Sabbath of the fourth commandment, denouncing them as deserving of the severest punishment, and giving the people liberty after a certain time to put them to death. Romanism in the old world and apostate Protestantism in the new will pursue a similar course toward those who honour all the divine precepts.
Thank you, Marie. You can rest now. You did well. So what I did while she was reading out was just to write them up here as a reference on the board. So when you take a photo, you can have a look at those or have them on hand. So we pick up from those readings that we're not just talking about the United States anymore. What area of the world are we looking at now?
Worldwide, isn't it?
Pardon?
Just the United States is going to be worldwide.
Not quite. Anybody else?
The whole Christian world, the old world and the new world, America and Europe.
Yes. Josephine, was that you who said worldwide before? Was that your voice?
Spoke up before I really heard the question.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. I just wanted to check if that made sense, what John said.
And that's true. I didn't hear the question properly. I just probably too busy writing.
You're good for taking notes. So hopefully, I think that you see that. It's the Christian world. Ellen White mentions the old world and the new world, and the word Christendom quite a bit. So when she's talking about the controversy over Sunday, she's not talking about India or Ghana or China. She's talking about Europe and the United States, countries that were in the 1260, and then we have the New World as well. So I'm going to put Christendom in. And up on our line of the top two, I'm just going to put Christendom 2. We have great controversy. And 1880s. And there's a cup again. And now we see it applies to Christendom. So we do see a change in what she says about the sins that are going to be judged. Okay, so we can see it's expanding out. What we do recognise, though, is that other countries were affected too. So slavery didn't just affect the United States. Slavery was an issue, and racism was an issue all around the world, but the focus prophetically was the United States. When it comes to worship and Sabbath, other countries, they're not keeping Sabbath either. So there is a problem around the world, but the prophetic focus is on Christendom. Okay, so it's just important that we recognise that nobody is saying that the rest of the world was doing the right thing necessarily. Now turning to the third dispensation, the final generation, there's a cup that's full. I'll just put final here. And there is sin. Now the question is, what's the geography? Now the issue here is gender. So question, is gender an issue that only applies to Christendom? Is this a sin that only Christendom is struggling with?
No.
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 Whole world.
Thank you. Yeah, the whole world. The Protestantism and papalism is irrelevant in this issue. It's not to do with the worshipping on Sunday. And we see that the influence of the World Wide Web has also affected this as well. We have the internet now, which sort of makes us a global world. So what we're going to look at now is presentation number 11 from 2019, which is called What Will the Sunday Law Look Like? Sorry, we're not turning our attention to that. We have just looked at that. That's what I meant. Okay. So now we're going to look at 1996, our dispensation. And we're going to look at our first angel and the Time of the End magazine, and that was what was written there. So I'm going to screen share the final rise and fall of the King of the North, which was the first angel's work. And we're going to look at what he expected the Sunday law test to look like for the final generation and what geography he was looking at as well. I'll just share that. Okay. John, would you be able to read this paragraph for us, please?
The whole world is going to be brought to an eternal decision as the three angels' messages swell into a loud cry. But the prophetic focus is on part of the world known as Christendom. To understand this prophetic sequence, we would view these scenes within the setting of the Christian world.
Thank you. Stay on the line there, John. I'll get you to read this one as well, if that's okay.
Prophetically, the focus is on Christendom. The symbols associated with the prophetic testimony of this time and hour must be understood within the context of Christendom, the main group of people to respond to the final message of mercy comes from Christendom.
Thank you, John. Okay, so we can see that Elder Jeff believed that this test would apply to Christendom and that it would be a Sunday issue. He did not understand the implications of the new dispensation. So he knew 1989 began a new dispensation, but he did not see the implications of that in terms of what the test would be or the geography that came later. Just to sort of further prove that point, can anybody name a place on earth that was not affected by what we just experienced, the time of trouble as priests? And we see time of trouble will continue through each of the different groups. What area of the world has not been affected by the time of trouble? We can see it's been a global time of trouble, can't we? So I'll put up on here as well. Hopefully you can see and agree that there is a global test here. Does anybody have any questions about what we've done so far? Okay, good. So we're going to turn our attention now to the implications of this. So having established it's global and gender, we are now going to move on to what this means to us, this shift in our thinking, because we were given a message from the first angel that had a certain idea about Sunday, but not only that, but it's starting in the United States and spreading across the world. So sort of originating there and spreading across the world. All of that is now affected, and so we need to rethink the role of the United States. So that's what we're going to look at here. We're going to talk about the United States, but before we get into that, we're going to look at this issue of race as well. But yeah, going back to this one, the sin is already everywhere. We can see that, and we will see more of that as I look a little bit at that further down. But when it says here, remove your United States lenses, the United States is still an important prophetic subject. So it's not that we ignore it, but it's the way that we look at sexism is can be affected if we look through the lens of the United States and just focus on their sins and their crimes, and then we neglect to see our own. So racism is related to here, and we see racism is related to cultures. And so we see in Vespers, we've been looking at culture and all that entails. And we can see here that this is connected to race. So we'll be looking at that now. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to clean a little bit off. I can't take a picture of the board, but I have already taken one in advance, so I'll share that one.
Katherine, could I just say something?
Sure.
It's just so much easier to see that it's not just the USA alone now, since, as you just said, since Vespers and learning about culture behind every belief system, including Christianity. It just makes it so much easier to see it's not just the USA. Wherever that culture is, you're going to have that problem.
Yeah, that's right. It's good to look back at this study and see the consistency of the message as well. Since then, this message was given 7 months ago. So it's still very relevant. We can see that it connects really well to the studies we're doing now. So thanks for sharing that point. All right. So yes.
Can you just give me the Jeff's the reference that Jeff based his belief on, that it's going to be just Christendom? I just want it for future when I'm sharing.
Put it up here.
With someone else.
I'll put it up here. So it's a book. So it's just called The Rise. I've probably got the Rise and Fall of the King of the North. Okay. And the readings that I had were from page 16 and 88 on the copy that I had, but I don't know if it's always the same. But if you did a search for the word Christendom, if you had a digital copy, you should be able to find those quotes. Okay. No problem, that's fine. All right, so going back to this presentation number 9. Okay, so this presentation is from here, and Elder Tess is standing here directing us back to it. When she did this presentation, she was discussing racism and lining it up with sexism, making her point. And one of her points was this one. We're looking at 2 lines, external and internal. Okay, so United States, and internally we're looking at the other institution, Seventh-day Adventism. So put USA and SDA here. We have a line, and we're going to mark 2015 for both. The issue that she chose for this waymark was at first she raised gay marriage, but then she talked about, so it was clearer with this one. A woman president is the question. Hillary Clinton runs, starts her campaign for president. So we have this issue here. Internally, we have the issue of women elders. Now, we have the glorious land making a decision on this one. And the question was, did the United States make the right decision on this issue? And the answer was yes, they did. And the problem, though, was that conservative countries had interfered with this. And we saw Russia here. And we also saw Britain's involvement as well, but Russia's primarily. And here we had the question of women elders. And the question was, how did the glorious land go on that? So I'll read you a quote of what Elder Tess said, because I think it's good to get it the way she said it. She said, come to the internal. So she just laid this one out. Just come to the internal. Women across Adventism put up their hand and say, we should be able to be ordained. So compare and contrast. Did the glorious land vote correctly? Then you hear that there's a reply given, but it's not audible, but presumably the person said no. Then she says, compare and contrast. Are you going off your feelings, off your Adventist conspiracy theories, off your thus saith the Lord or methodology? Because I can assure you, if you don't follow methodology, your time in this movement is limited. In fact, I don't know why you're here, because you should be owning slaves. The glorious land voted correctly, and what stopped it? Conservative nations. Then she writes Africa on the board. So that's what happened in 2019. Now what I want to read to you is what she says here, 2021, as she looks back on this. And again, I'm going to read so we get the words correct and, get the full meaning. So she's here now, looking back and directing us to look back. So there's a couple of things I wanted to take from that presentation. I think people think I'm more aggressive on the issues of equality now. Perhaps they weren't among the number that felt targeted back then, but I did think one thing in that presentation, which was very, very deliberate, and I wondered whether or not I would do it. I agonised over it because I knew it would be controversial. I knew it would look racist, and I decided to do it anyway because I did not want to sell out the test of this dispensation because of that fear. I knew the test then was going to be gender. FFA, no one was going to leave leave the movement if we ordained a black man. Elder Jeff already had. Okay, so it's late 2021. We're standing here, she's talking about this study. And the current context here in 2021 is that there have been some sexist and abusive men in Zimbabwe that have been kicked out of leadership positions, and they're murmuring about it with other men from another African nation and making complaints. And the complaints that they're making is, they're so racist. This is a racist attack. In fact, Adventism generally is racist. So we can't even name an African General Conference president. There hasn't ever been one. So we just know Adventism is just racist. It's all racism. But I think anybody from a Western country would know that sexism is not tolerated by the movement, no matter what country you're from, whether you're black or white or brown or anything in between. And this is not an issue of race, this is an issue of sexism. But the racism issue is clouding their vision and making it impossible for them to see giving them excuses, ability to deny that they're being sexist and all of that. So what she said is that when she wrote this up, and she wrote Africa here, she had just actually, at this waymark here, she had just come from Zimbabwe. So I'll read what she said. And again, here, she's here saying this now. When I wrote Africa, I meant Zimbabwe because I knew what I saw. And I didn't just see the present, I saw the future. I saw today. I saw the fight we would have. Members of this movement in some African countries are having their names scratched out of Adventist church books for not paying dowry because they're expected to abide not just by Adventism, but by culture. Members within Africa accepting equality are being so persecuted. So what she's saying is membership equals Adventism plus culture. And that's where the problem is. And then she says it's not just in Africa, she's seen this all over the world. So this is the problem with the lens. So we'll just turn our attention to this little point here, remove your racism lens. We acknowledge that racism exists in the world, but the problem is when you look at the issue of gender through the lens of racism, then it just leads to all this denial and excuses and opposition to leadership as well, resentment, and then people eventually leaving. It's the lens of racism that can blind people to the gender issues that they need to face. So the call was to remove the lens of racism. Okay, so that's that point. I want to move now to the lens of the United States. Okay, leave the board as is, I think, for now. And we're going to say, so we have established that sexism is already everywhere. And we could see from the lines already that it's not on this board, it's on the other one. But we saw from the lines that gender is the issue, and we know we've got all the evidence for that. And we also have the evidence for it being a global test. And that means that it's not starting in the United States and spreading everywhere. We're not going to catch sexism from the United States. We have plenty of our own, unfortunately. And so if we focus too much on the sins of the United States and the crimes that are going on there, sexist crimes, and we focus all on that and wait for something to come spread to us, we're missing our own and we're blinded. So if you're not an American, then the sins of the United States are not your problem. You have your own problems. So it just brings us to the title, the United States is not your problem. But we do again need to reiterate that the United States is a prophetic subject and important, but the sin is global. Now I'm going to share an article that Elder Tess shared, which just illustrates one place in the world that is not United States, which has its own. No, go back to Zoom, screen share, our web browser. Okay, Ray, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, what I would like you to do is to read the heading, the little paragraph there, and then we're going to read the first 3 paragraphs of this article, if you don't mind, please.
Women in Papua New Guinea are suffering an epidemic of violence. The government must act. Last year, 15,444 cases of domestic violence were reported, but only 250 people were prosecuted and 100 convicted. Victims deserve better.
You can read the little blurb under the picture too, I think, if that's okay.
A survivor of sorcery-related violence and her daughter in Papua New Guinea. A parliamentary inquiry found there was a lack of government support to adequately respond to all the country's cases of violence against women and girls. A woman is beaten every 30 seconds in Papua New Guinea, and more than 1.5 million people experience gender-based violence in the country each year. On 3 September in Mount Hagen, one of the country's largest cities, 3 men were released from prison after being accused of murdering a 31-year-old woman, Imelda Tupi Tiamanda. One of them was her husband. The magistrate dismissed the charges, citing a lack of evidence. The decision was made even though police found the deceased woman's body wrapped in tarpaulin in the back of her husband's vehicle at a police checkpoint with the other 2 co-accused men present, the National reported. When questioned by police, the husband allegedly confessed to the murder.
Thank you. So this was given as just one example, if anyone needed convincing that it's not just the United States with a problem with gender, just gender inequality, violence, abuse, all of that to horrific extent. So it's a real sin. The cup is nearly full. So the point being that this doesn't start in the United States, it's spread out. But the other point being that we can see here that culture is a factor. It's not church and state, it's culture and state. So we can see that through our Vespers now, that's being brought out a little bit more sort of like crystallised. But we can see that there's consistency. Looking back, we can see that the message has been the same and consistent all the way through. Every people group on earth has a culture that is sexist. And the meaning of the word, if can remember as well from the studies we did, cultus, and that meaning sacred. So for many people, their local cultures are sacred to them and very deeply ingrained, very loved, and any criticism of it, of the culture, is not tolerated by many. So what do? Do we say sexism is wrong? Yeah, we say sexism is wrong, and so does just about everybody in the world. But the problem is that we have blindness. So not just we say it's wrong, but we actually don't see it. We can't see a lot of it. So what are we supposed to do about it? We're supposed to listen to leadership. We're supposed to listen to people, mostly women, that get it, and we need to believe them. We need to do something about it, and we need to remove the lens of racism, and we need to remove this idea of just focusing on the United States sins. Now to our last point, rethinking about the United States. So in the it's a global test, so there's sin already in every country. Our idea of the role of the United States has been wrong, and we can see that we've inherited that and we've had to unlearn that. Some people think or claim that Elder Tess has changed or backtracked on the role of the United States, but that's not actually the case. In the past, she did say things that she knew people were misunderstanding her, and she gave 3 examples of things that she had said all the way through consistently. When people said the Patriarch was wicked, she had said, no, it was needed, but it was misused and it could have been done better. When people said problems in the Middle East were due to colonialism, she had said, no, that was always too simple an argument. And leaving Afghanistan, a necessary step, but it could have been done better. And we see now that we are learning more about this as well. But this was what she said 7 months ago in this study that she gave in 2021. Quoting Elder Tess, whether it was World Wars or the Patriot Act, I've always tried to get people to see it clearly with a nuance. So we are learning now about those nuances, aren't we, investors? So to summarise what we've studied today, we looked at the 3 dispensations: Millerite history, 1888, final generation. We looked at the chapters from spiritual gifts and from great controversy. We laid all of that out, a little bit of revision to make the point that the test is global. Then we looked at how that had implications for how we view the United States. And we also saw that when we blame gender tests as racism, we miss the point and it keeps us blind. So focusing on the sins of the United States blinds us to our own culture's sexism. And we looked at the statistics from one country as an example of the problem that is faced around the world. So we need to rethink about US policies now, and we are learning about that. And we can see the elder test has been consistent on the subject of the role of the United States. I want to close in prayer and then open it up for questions if you have any. So if you would kneel with me. Dear God, we thank you so much for giving us clear messages, structures and methodology and prophecy to guide the way we understand history and current events. And we know that prophecy is what guides us. And may we stay true and close to prophecy as our guide and not wander off on our own. Let us not all try to be leaders, but to follow the leader you've designated, and to listen and to revise and to carefully consider what we're being taught. Not to be dismissive of it or casual, but to really see the need that we have to deal with our blindness, and that this is our way to see, and this is the only way that we can see. We do want to understand what tests are ahead and what lies ahead and what we should be doing. And we want to develop empathy as well, and a spirit of self-sacrifice and service for others. So pray that you would continue to lead and guide us. And we thank you so much for this community of believers, and we ask your blessing for the rest of this Sabbath in Jesus' name. Amen.